This is Richie Khandelwal, and you're listening to Sweet Success.
You've just checked in to Sweet Success. Join me, Katie Cline, for exclusive conversations with hotel executives, hospitality leaders, and industry innovators. Together, we'll uncover the strategies and techniques these masters of hospitality relentlessly refine. Whether you're already in the industry or just starting out, tune in every week to unlock the secret to your sweet success. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sweet Success. I'm your host, Katie Cline, and today I am thrilled to welcome Richie Khandelwal to the show. Richie is the co-founder of PriceLabs, a cloud-based revenue management platform used by vacation rental owners and independent hoteliers around the world to optimize pricing, boost revenue, and stay ahead of market demand. Before starting PriceLabs, Richie was an engineer for the global energy company Shell, a consultant at Bain & Co., and held several other roles, all of which took him around the globe, from Norway and Malaysia to Louisiana, Massachusetts, and Texas, and now to Pune, India. Richie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, excited to be here. And I did not know that you had that background of where all I'd worked and lived. Good fond memories, as you were saying that.
A publicist is always good at her background research. Don't you worry.
All right. Hopefully you don't have any secrets on me.
Only the good ones, of course. Only the good ones. Talking about your background, you have really lived and worked all over the world. How did that global exposure shape the way that you think about hospitality and broader traveler behavior?
I think one thing that you learn when you live globally, and we were just talking about this just before we hopped on this call, right? Is you very quickly realize that there is no one size that fits all, and really personalization is key, and you have to adapt to those local cultures or local nuances, right? And so that applies to hospitality, and that also applies to, say, something like PriceLabs, right? We sell globally. How do you adapt to local cultures? Or also, we build our algorithms which are hyper local. But you're trying to essentially, when you live globally, you learn so much from people, and you realize that how you were thinking is probably fundamentally different from how someone from a different background just thinks about things, right? And so I think that's kind of how I think about hospitality, which is. Think of personalization, think of cultural nuances as you're thinking about hospitality.
That is such a beautiful way to summarize it. And like you said, when you compare it to a product like PriceLabs, you said there's no one size fits all. So it's like you're creating this one product that is solving a broader need. But then I imagine you are leaving room for the product to be able to flex and change based on exactly what you said. What works in one market or the needs in another market are going to be different than another. So I guess let's back up a bit. And can you tell us the origin story of PriceLabs?
I was living in Chicago, or outside Chicago, Evanston at the time. I was doing my MBA at Northwestern, and this is back in 2012 or 13. And I don't know if you remember, Airbnb had just started. Sharing economy was all the rage, and I had a spare bedroom that I could put on Airbnb. And so I started putting my spare bedroom on Airbnb, and very quickly realized that I was pricing flat. So whatever, $60, $70 a night for a spare bedroom, right? And sometimes lower. But it was just flat. And it's Chicago. We were just talking about New York winters, but Chicago winters are brutal. No one's coming to Evanston in winters. No one's actually really coming other than, game days or Northwestern specific days, whether that's reunions or new class joining or things like that, right? And so I was pricing flat, and it naturally did not make sense to me. And one of my good friends from undergrad, and I'd done my undergrad back in India, and my good friend from undergrad was also in Chicago, now a co-founder at PriceLabs, Anurag, and he was building revenue models for United Airlines in Chicago. And so we started PriceLabs almost as a weekend project because we wanted to build, or I wanted to build, and he was smart enough to build this, saying, "Hey, let's build something for my spare bedroom, so that I can generate. Some days I could be on $90, and some days I could be on $40, and still get reservations." And then we found a friend of a friend, Sana, who had prior experience at Orbitz, and so understood the travel landscape. As you know, probably having used PriceLabs, market data plays a large role in how you price. And so Sana was able to get us the market data, and that was like the foundational stuff of getting out of the gates, just building for my home, and then realizing that there was nothing like it out there otherwise.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, first of all, they always say, right, like build what you need, build the company that you want to exist. And you literally did that. And I love how you're talking about the founding story too, of pulling these people and these pieces together. Because like you said, the airline industry had some form of dynamic pricing since,
Yeah.
let's say, the 70s. Obviously, they're still extremely complex in certain ways to this day, but dynamic pricing is something that is very normal there. The hotel industry, even since like the early 2000s, but short-term rentals, that has been lacking. And before we started recording, I was fangirling a bit over PriceLabs because it's been a product that I've used since literally day one of opening my very first short-term rental. I now have 3 short-term rentals. I just started co-hosting for a 4th property. And one of the first things I said to that owner was, you need to sign up for PriceLabs, because I don't actually understand how people can determine their price without you guys, because you are pulling in all of these other inputs and everything to help us set ourselves up smarter.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so you're right. Airlines had pricing going back to 70s, constantly changes. Your models constantly change. Hotels actually, Katie, hotels also since 80s or something like that. 80s.
Oh, really?
Late 80s, early 90s. The short-term rental industry, or vacation rental industry, whichever we want to call it, right, has gone through a massive change over the last 15 years or so. So if we say, right, because before that, and even today I know some, but before that, a lot of the short-term rental industry or vacation rental industry was booking offline. They were not online, right? And so if you book offline, you can only change your rates so much, right? Because you just don't have that opportunity. And then various kinds of tech that needed to exist in order for something like PriceLabs to exist just didn't exist before. I want to say 2005, 2006. So it just wasn't possible to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah. But excited to be here now. We've been in this for 11 years and running. And so it's been a while now.
And looking back on your career and, getting to that point of, pursuing your MBA at Northwestern, do you think there's a particular experience or a moment that made you feel prepared to create, build, and launch this company?
Yeah, I wouldn't count so much so as an experience. And we talked about the breadth of experience, really, right? And every experience has its own way of influencing you, having impact on you, right? But I think more than the experience, it's the breadth of network that has really allowed me to build, create, launch something like PriceLabs, right? And I particularly say this, which is having the right kind of network is sometimes important. The network that pushes you to go further, but also supports you when you're at your lowest or not doing as well, etc. Right? But I think it's really the network that has helped me to even feel like that I could build and create something of my own.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a mental hurdle to get over in the first place. Of most people would look around and say, "Oh man, it would be nice if there was a tool that would help me do this." And that would be the end of it. But actually turning to friends and others to say, "Hey, I could help you with that," or "You could go do that. You should build something like that." And now, like you said, look at you 11 years later. So, do you have any advice for other aspiring entrepreneurs, especially those in the hospitality and tech space?
Yeah. I'm extremely lucky to be in this industry. Hospitality industry happened here by chance, right? But I think this is one of the best industries anyone could build a software for, or I say software, but anything in this industry, right? And we have a ton of team members who come from various other industries and join PriceLabs and go to shows and events and conferences, and they're just struck by the welcoming nature and the helping nature of everyone in the industry. So, firstly, I want to start off and say, hey, if you're building in hospitality tech space, at tech space or anything around hospitality, this is just a fantastic industry to be in. You're going to find the nicest of folks who are going to be welcoming, who are going to be helpful, etc. Right? And from there, I think then you just for any entrepreneur, not just hospitality, but I think of three things that are very, very crucial. One, having the right focus, right? Decide the problem that you want to solve. Make sure it's a decently sizable enough problem, right? And then just double down and solve it, right? Double down and try to solve it. I often see people get distracted too often, right? Not by the problem, but by the charm of everything else that comes with solving that problem, right? So it's a focus. Second, I would say you need resilience, right? You need to do the hard yards. You're going to have no no story only has an upward curve, right? There is always some downward curve, some something, etc. Right? PriceLabs, our favorite moment is I'd moved back to India and we just started setting up our team in India in Feb of 2020, and then March of 2020, COVID happened.
Oh my
And we were just like,
You're
what?
like, I have this great idea. We're going to build a tech company in the travel space. COVID.
Exactly, right? And then and I'd just gotten married 2 months before that, and so it was all just like, and COVID happens, and you're like, now suddenly you're spending 14 hours. Every customer's like, hey, we can't pay our invoices, or can you do extensions, or we just need to cancel, or whatever else, right? I just think, like, as a founder, you need resilience. Everyone's going to have all kinds of ups and downs. Sometimes they happen weekly and they're small. Sometimes they last a month. Sometimes they last a few months. But you just need the resilience. And then last, I would say, is adaptability. And I'm thankful again for where you started, having traveled globally. Sometimes you put yourself in uncomfortable positions when you're living outside your own world, right? Outside your own box, right? And that helps you be adaptable. But I think adaptability is the last thing that I would say, right? You need to, you don't have to be super tight to your beliefs, your principles. You have to adapt. Sometimes maybe your idea is not going the way you want. You have to adapt, or something else happens and you have to adapt, right? Going back, fantastic industry to build in, but make sure you focus, have resilience, and then be adaptable. If you have those three characteristics, I think it's a fantastic space to build in.
I couldn't agree more about the industry too. It's the most warm, welcoming, supportive industry. I started my career in fashion, and lots of lovely things you could say about the fashion industry, but let's just say when I came over to hospitality, I was so pleasantly surprised to be here.
I have only heard secondhand about fashion and Devil Wears Prada. So those are my two reference points, and I would say maybe hospitality is a better industry.
It's a nicer fit, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
that advice that you shared is so poignant because it's fairly simple, but I think people lose it a lot. Like even what you said about decide the problem you want to solve and then solve it and focus on that and not get distracted by all the other things that you could or should be doing. And I liked what you talked about resilience and adaptability and, starting the company in India and then COVID happening a month later. Do you think back of any mistakes that you've made along the way or anything that you looked back and you said, I wish we didn't do it that way? Or maybe you thought at the time it was a mistake, but looking back, it actually led to something better?
Yeah. I think, Katie, if I'm being very honest, right, I don't think I was the most resilient person. Or resilient is not the right word, right? But there was, and as is true with a lot of people of high caliber, is that growing up, I just did not have enough number of times that I failed at something. Maybe I just
Mm.
didn't try hard enough, right?
Mhm.
But it was just like, or maybe I was just in a safe space. But just there were like very limited number of failures, and whenever there was a failure, I could attribute it to something that was outside my control. And I won't mention the exact situation, but there was this one time where I really felt like I had failed. And I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because that was the first time that I actually like said a vow to myself that I would put in the hard yards, no matter what. Right. And
Mm.
I feel I'd failed just because I'd gotten to that 90% and I was just like, okay, I was swimming in my success rather than saying I need to get this to 100%. Right. So
Right.
not so much a mistake, but just like a personal situation that happened, where for the first time where I felt like, okay, this is on me, no
Mhm.
external factors, etc. This is on me, right? And once I acknowledged that, I think then it was just like, make sure you don't do that again, right? And put your hard yards in. And so I think that's one thing that I've learned. And Kobe Bryant is one of my favorite athletes, and also just the fact, like this whole mentality thing of that I'm going to show up before everyone and I'm going to be
Mhm.
there after everyone, and every day I'm going to gain grounds on you. That just is something that at least at that point about a decade ago is what I said. That's what I'm going to do for the next decade or two.
I really resonate with what you were saying too about I do feel like a lot of high performing people, we get to a certain point and we've succeeded. And then there's that plateau. And it's that moment of, am I going to go try the big scary thing? That the likelihood is we are going to fail. And that makes us very uncomfortable and we don't like it. And I think once you've gone through a few of those failures, you start to realize that most people who have created something or built something have done exactly that. And it's really unfortunate because I think the media and social media focus a lot on these people who are like, yeah, I just started a Substack one day and I got 1 million followers and then I got offered a book deal and here I am on the Today Show. And you're like, I have been trying for 10 years and I can't grow this business or whatever it is. But I love when people like you share that because it helps the rest of us to say, okay, actually, it's the people who have failed and keep going that are going to build something great rather than the people who get it right every single time.
And there are going to be some people who are going to be lucky, right? There are going to be some people who are going to be lucky, who are just going to swim through everything and just never see it, right? And you're also right that looking from outside, it always looks like an overnight success, overnight sensation, right? But I think if you peel the onion or look below the surface, right, it's usually there's a lot more that goes in, right? Like
Mhm.
10 years of a PR career or longer, but to someone it's just like, oh, fantastic podcaster, right? What a great success. But don't see the hard years, right? Yeah. So it does happen. Yeah. And I wish media did not glorify it as much. And personally, I don't know how education system was where you grew up, but I think even our education system did not help us appreciate failures as much, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
always made success or like a great thing, right? But failures is probably a wrong word, right? Just as we discussed, maybe it's learning opportunities or whatever, right? But I think those are important moments in life. If we can take some time to absorb, I think those are great opportunities.
I saw a quote fairly recently that said something like, I've failed more times than you've ever tried. And I think about that a lot, particularly when things are not going the way that I want them to, or I just feel like I've been trying for so long and, certain things aren't coming together or what have you. It is a good reminder of like the failure is equally a badge of honor as like the success. And of course, as we were talking about with me being a publicist, I love a story. And like you said, a good story is not just an upward trajectory. You need those dips along the way to really root for our hero.
Yeah, and I love that quote. I love that quote because unless like I I don't know where to read this, but you're basically if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, and maybe you're not living your potential in some ways.
Yes, yes. So speaking of living potential, let's talk a bit more about PriceLabs. For
Yeah.
someone who has never heard of dynamic pricing or have never used dynamic pricing, I doubt it's many of our listeners and viewers because most of this wonderful universe is hospitality pros. But how would you give that kind of 101 explainer?
Sure. I think most of us probably have, in some worldview, experienced dynamic pricing, right? You've either been on an airline, you've booked an Uber or a Lyft, you probably bought concert tickets, you've experienced it some way or the other, right? Dynamic pricing, at least when we talk about the hospitality sector, we're basically saying us adjusting your rates based on demand and supply. Demand is constantly changing. It's changing by the day of week. It's changing by the season. It's changing by the year, and so is supply. Supply is also constantly changing. Right? New homes come into the market. New hotels come into the market. Some go off market, and as that happens, this dynamic of supply changing or demand changing always is at flux. And dynamic pricing is trying to find the right price point that you want to be at, right? Having said that, that does not mean you don't stay in control. You stay in control, whether that's you setting a minimum, you setting a maximum, you setting certain rules that are you're operational in nature, right? But very simply, all of us exist here to for two reasons. One, hopefully, we love hospitality, and number two, we want to make money doing this, right? And dynamic pricing is about helping that side of the business, the money side of the business, to make sure when the high demand dates are there, you actually get a booking, right? And when low demand dates are there, we tell you to drop your prices because you're not going to get a booking unless the prices are low enough to get a booking, right? And so that's what it is, adjusting up and down.
And what I love about your tool, and you just touched on it here, is there is that human element of setting that minimum and maximum. So, depending on your goals, for example, for really all of my properties, there's a certain amount of money that if it goes below that price, it's not really interesting to me because, particularly one of my properties in Lake George, it can sleep up to 12 people. If I go super low and someone's going to jam in 12 people, I know the caliber of guest that's going to come in and it's not worth it to me to take the risk on the property. So I love the flexibility of the tool to be able to put my own parameters on it. And just to clarify, PriceLabs does work with hoteliers as well as short-term rentals, right?
PriceLabs works with hotels and short-term rentals. We're new to hotels. We've started working with hotels about 3 years ago, and about a year ago, started really diving in and building specific products for the hotel segment. But today we work with both hotels and vacation rentals.
Incredible. And you're seeing data across thousands of markets worldwide. Are you seeing any surprising demand trends show up?
I think at this point it's not as surprising, Katie, but I think most people have heard this. All through 2025, we saw shrinking of booking windows. People were booking a lot more. I wouldn't call it last minute, but a lot more closer to the arrival date than we have seen in the past. And that's been an interesting trend in 2025. The other interesting trend that we have seen is that demand still has largely held up, right? Going into 2025, there were some fears about markets slowing down or some fears of recession, etc. But we've generally seen demand hold up. Now, this is broad swathing across the world, right? If you start looking at micro markets, there are some markets that are not doing as well, and some markets doing better than before. But if you have to look at one thing, I would say largely there's this shrinking of windows. And then second, if I could touch on that, which is we're also seeing this demand switch between hotels, vacation rentals, boutique hotels, etc. Right, a lot more. Like if I think pre-COVID, there was an audience for vacation rentals and there was an audience for hotels, and you didn't really see the merge between the two as much, right? And then just after COVID, there was like a very dedicated audience for vacation rentals. I'm going with family. I'm going to doing something vacation rental, right? And then now I think we're entering into a era where people look at that inventory interchangeably. They say, I can stay in a vacation rental and it has certain advantages. I have a kitchen, I have whatever else. But I could also stay in a hotel and I have certain advantages there. And now I'm weighing my pros and cons depending on my family situation, where I am, and what gets offered. So that's the second thing that we're seeing a little bit more.
Yes. I feel that personally. It's something I've been saying for a while too, just in my own life. I obviously come from working in the hotel industry. I love hotels. I will always love hotels, especially luxury hotels. And now I own and operate 3 or 4 short-term rentals. I have 2 young children. So there are a lot of advantages for me as a person to stay at a short-term rental because I can have the kids have their own room, or I have a fridge for bottles and all those little things that maybe are a bit more difficult to achieve in a hotel room, or I would need a higher level suite product in order to be able to do it. It doesn't mean I only stay in vacation rentals or I only stay in hotels, but it really makes me look at the trip holistically. What am I looking for? What do I want? And which is going to deliver that for me?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think that's probably a trend that we see come up here over the next couple of years, right? Just this blurring line between the hotel segment and short-term rental segment, and then this category of apart hotels also, that's just starting to come up a little bit more, right? Between the three, I think we'd see merging of lines between the three.
And AI, of course, is such a buzzword hot topic within our industry, every industry really. How is PriceLabs working with AI, thinking about AI?
Yeah, so a couple of things, right? Just a quick backstory. When we started PriceLabs, so what PriceLabs does is essentially artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a system looking through data and coming up with something, right, on its own. And what PriceLabs does by generating those rates is essentially artificial intelligence. 11 years ago, when we started PriceLabs, our first marketing copy read something like PriceLabs artificial intelligence algorithm that does XYZ. And our communications person at that time, we ended up speaking to a bunch of folks, and we striked out artificial intelligence and we said data driven. And we said that because 11 years ago, and somewhat it's true today, people were unsure what artificial intelligence means, right? And it just meant, I don't have control. I don't like this, right? Less so now than 11 years ago, right? So anyways, long story short, one, we are fundamentally an artificial intelligence product, right? It's an intelligence product that does things on its own, figures out supply and demand, figures out what the price should be, of course, within the bounds of how you want to operate it, right? But on top of that, I was maybe mentioning this to you before we hopped on. We're rolling out a new product called Listing Optimizer this week. And what this does is it looks through your Airbnb profile of the property, looks through your photos, your descriptions, your titles, everything, and tries to look at it in combination with what we have learned over the years in what generates money. And based on that, it tries to give you a rank on how well are you doing in terms of your setup. And then also gives you recommendations on what to change in your setup, right? And then lastly, it tells you how your competition is also doing in terms of their setup.
And when you say setup, do you mean the setup of your actual listing on Airbnb or the setup of your home?
Airbnb. Set up on Airbnb, right? So, so ideally, like in a fashion store sense, I would call this like your shop front, right? That's your shop front, right? You're walking down your downtown, and you have a shop front, and you want to make sure that shop front looks like inviting enough for someone to come in. The right kind of ICP to come in, of course, right? You don't want the wrong kind of ICP to walk into your store, but the right kind of ICP. And so your Airbnb page is your shop front, right? And so helping you maximize conversions on that shop front is where we are going towards. Because when we think about your revenue, and there are a few other products that we today have and have in pipeline, but we can price you really well to help you optimize your revenue, right? But we can also help you with conversions on the page, because you could be priced very, very well, but if your storefront is not exciting enough, and again, on that downtown street, if your storefront is not exciting enough, you could have absolutely the most fantastic things inside the store, and you could have the right priced products. But if your shopfront is not exciting enough, and it's not converting enough, then you don't get people through the door. So that's what we're solving with Listing Optimizer this week.
That is so exciting for people, because you hear it a lot right now, Airbnb bust, or, demand is down. And then you look at someone's listing and their first photo is of an unmade bed, or their first 7 photos are like grainy iPhone photos of the area, and you haven't even shown me anything about the property yet. And I'm like, this is not a demand issue. This is your fault. Like, kind of what you're saying, like, your shop front is not appealing. This is a transaction. You have not done anything to lure the customer in. And I love to see what's happening in the hotel industry. And this has started a few years ago now, but it used to be almost real estate style photography of rooms and spaces in hotels. And that has really evolved into more of that social media friendly, maybe an intentionally messy bed showing like a breakfast spread or something, but not a dirty or unmade or not a professional photo. And I think in the short-term rental industry, we do have a lot of catching up to do because of the democratization of this space. You could be just my next door neighbor who wants to list their space and not have any experience in our world. And then you're missing really crucial elements of what it takes to be successful. And that's why having someone like PriceLabs coach you is really helpful.
Yeah. And it's not just those starting points, Katie. So that's the starting point. But here's an example, right? About a year and a half ago, we were in Paris during summer, for the Olympics and just to watch it there, right? And this was a particularly hot summer, and Paris homes are not generally, at least the area that we wanted to stay in, don't generally have air conditioning inbuilt into the house, right? And so a lot of those property managers bring in portable air conditioning units, right? The small stand-in units, right, for the home, and that's just the norm, right? That's just how it is, right? These could be very expensive homes, but have a portable unit in them because they were not built for those hot summers. But the area that we wanted to live in probably had like 1,000 homes or something, right? So it's like densely packed area, well-known area, and 1,000 homes that were available. But the first thing that we did, we went to Airbnb, we filtered for air conditioning because my wife was like, no way, not staying anywhere that does not have air conditioning, right? And so the first thing that you do is filter, because how else do you look through 1,000 homes, right? You filter for air conditioning, 5 showed up.
Wow.
Right. But that's not the reality. The reality is there were probably several other homes who had an air conditioning unit, right? They had either not put it on their profile itself, right? Or they had added a photo, but not done anything else. Or they had mentioned it in description, right? And forgotten to update amenity, right? And let's be realistic. As hosts, we are busy, right? We're busy. We're running 1,000 different directions. Maybe we have something else on the side, and sometimes these small things can just get missed, right? And then our system tries to catch this, and over time, it will. Of course, we are starting out. Dynamic pricing has existed for 11 years. This is today 2 days old, and maybe 6 months old in our beta kind of profile, right? But we're trying to catch up to that, to saying, how do we help you convert better? I was looking at a customer's profile yesterday, and their profile, for whatever reason, said Valley View, right? That this property has a Valley View. And there were 2 reviews or feedbacks that said it does not have a Valley View, right? And now that's clear indication for you to go change your description, right? But maybe it just never occurred to this person that they should do it, or how often do we actually go look back at our descriptions and whatever, right? Maybe sometimes we do, right? But this is something that we can highlight very, very simply, saying, hey, if you don't have a value view, maybe you should not say it's a value view, right? And so things like that, which can just be brought up very simply. Um, Another example that comes to mind on this is there's a small hotel which had construction going on. And so some of the reviews said, hey, construction going on, so avoid this property or whatever, right? Um, and and I think that's an opportunity for in the description to upfront address, hey, on from so and so date we had construction going on, but it's no longer there, and now this is good to book. Right? Because otherwise, I'm going to read the review and I'm going to be like, I don't know. There's nothing in the property about this, description about this, and there's a review about noise. Maybe not for me. So that's kind of what we're trying to solve.
Or even when the construction is going on, to say construction will be going on from this date to this date. It's going to affect this area. It's not going to affect this area. And as a result, we've given you really discounted rates during this time. There's going to be a customer who says, I'll take the chance of the noise because I'll get a great deal. Versus if you don't even communicate that to your guests, they just think they paid what they paid, and then they're annoyed because you didn't set their expectations. And I know earlier we were talking about like the ability to set your minimum and maximum price and have control over the space too. How do you think about that balance between automated pricing and human intuition? Or is there ever a moment where a human should override the algorithm?
Yeah. Very simply said, algorithm is almost like an index, right? It's taking your average risk profile, and based on that, it's building an output, right? But as a human, you may have different risk profiles, right? We're talking about entrepreneurs, maybe extremely risky, and then you have some people who don't want to take the risk, right? Who want a surety of an income, right? And so, depending on your risk profile, you want to tweak the algorithm to saying, I want to be conservative or I want to be aggressive. I'm okay with not dropping prices last minute, but I really like surety of revenue. I want to drop prices, and there are various ways that you can think about this within the platform. And then the second thing is also your operational control, which is like you said, right? I have a 12 bedroom, and I know there is a certain type of profile that I get below a certain price point, and I just don't want that. And that's an operational control you want, right? Maybe with a lower price we could fill that night, and maybe with the thresholds that you have, you'd not fill that night. But that's an absolutely fine threshold to have, because that's what you need for your home to be there the next night. Otherwise, maybe it's not there the next night, right? And then the last thing, I think human intuition is still important, right? Algorithms will continue to get better. AI will continue to get better, but I don't think so. We're close enough to AGI to think about that human intuition will be overtaken, right? So I think around those three lines, right? I think of risk, what your risk profile is. I think of your operational controls. How do you want the last minute, or I don't like last day stays or things like that, right? Or let 1 day stay or 2 day stays, things like that. And then thirdly, I think about intuition, right? I think human intuition is still fairly strong. And as much as we try to get there with the algorithms, I think we have ways to go.
Yeah. We are very, very close to 2026, which is kind of crazy to say. How far out should hoteliers be looking, and what data signals do you think should really be used as almost a crystal ball?
Yeah. One, I wish there was a crystal ball.
We all do.
I could tell you a crystal ball, right? Yeah. I think the very first thing as a hotelier that you want to look at is understand your booking windows and how far out do people book, right? Almost draw out like like a booking curve, which is while majority of people book in 30 to 60 days, but I still get bookings outside of 120 days, and I still get some bookings on 180 days, and my peak periods get booked a year before. You want to have that basic understanding, right? And that's your answer to first, how far out should you be looking, right? Because let's say if you're in London or Dubai, maybe you're really your booking windows are 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? But if you're in Cape Cod, maybe your booking windows are 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, I don't know what, right? So how far out you're looking is really dependent on where you are. And the best way to figure this out is look at your own property and also look at the market to understand how quick, how fast does that market book and when does that book, right? Again, you can use PriceLabs for it. You can use any other tools for it, right? And then in terms of signals that you should look at, once you have that understanding of when bookings happen, right, you should be looking to compare to saying, if last year, let's pick Easter weekend, which is my big high demand weekend. If that got booked last year by December, and for a lot of the market by Jan, right? If I'm in 2026 and I am in Jan, I want to say, why is it not booked for me? Mm-hmm. Also, I want to say what's happening with the rest of the market. Maybe it's not booked for the rest of the market as well, so I don't need to panic.
Right.
If it's booked for the rest of the market, maybe I'd have a slight panic to saying, why am I not booked, right? But so you want to look at that. I'd really look for these booking windows and how it's pacing in terms of compared to last year and compared to market. Those are the things that I would really look at to have a crystal ball and say what's happening in the market.
That's such great advice. And while I intuitively know that for my properties, you're making me think I need to get into the tool and really pull those reports for my properties. I didn't really realize that that was something I could do so easily. So I'm very nerdily excited to do that after our conversation. What can you share about future growth plans for the company? What's next for the platform? Obviously, you just shared a brand new tool, but what else are you thinking about?
Yeah, there are a few different things that we're thinking about. Two in particular, and third that I'm not yet ready to share, but hopefully in 2026. But the very first thing that we're saying is we are broadening the scope of what revenue management means, right? We'd always continue to be a dynamic pricing provider, and let's say 90% of our efforts will go towards improving the algorithm and make the pricing work for you, right? But then we're also trying to say, what else do you need from us when it comes to revenue? We're not operations. We're not helping you with cleaning, etc. Right? But with revenue, what else can we do to help you improve your revenue? Right? Is it shop front? Is it something else, etc. Right? So that's one space that we are broadening into. And then the second part is the accommodation type. We're number one player when it comes to vacation rentals, short-term rentals, right? And hotels is the next segment that we are foraying into. And then the third segment that we already have customers in but would want to foray more into is mid-term rentals. So those are the three segments that we'd focus into, right? And then the third thing I'll reveal in 2026.
Oh, well, we'll have to have you back and you can give us the scoop then.
Yeah.
Exciting. Well, Richie, I want to ask you the last three questions that I ask every guest. And the first is, what was the best hospitality experience that you've ever had?
Yeah, there have been so many. But I think most recently, I was staying for a staycation at a hotel nearby with my parents. And the staff there was just absolutely fantastic. In passing, I'd mentioned to them, "Oh, we'd like to have dinner at this one place," and they remembered this. Right? We were just having a casual conversation over the reception counter kind of stuff, right? So it's not a ask from me,
right?
Concierge, right? But they remembered. Next morning, while we were having breakfast, they came over to us and said, "Oh, I've made a few calls to figure out how we can get you a table there, but I've not had success. But just wanted to let you know I'm still trying." And I was just like, I didn't even expect this from you, right?
Wow.
And I think that's what fantastic experiences are made of, right? Whatever your expectation might be, if that gets superseded, right? I think that's usually the best experience that you've had. That at least I've always had.
What I really like about that example that you just gave too is I expected you to say they came over and said they booked the table for you. And it wasn't even that. It was just, we're trying and we heard you And I think that's such a powerful reminder to people that you don't even have to get it over the finish line. It's just that effort, that listening, that attention to detail. And like you said, it wasn't like you went to the concierge and said, please book me X, Y, and Z. You were just having a chat and they heard you and they took the initiative to do something more.
100%, right? It's just the initiative, right? It's they didn't have to succeed at it. It's just the fact that they were trying is enough. Yeah.
Hmm. And on the flip side of that, what was the worst hospitality experience you've ever had?
I think it's not anticipating the needs of your travelers.
Mm.
We were traveling with, sounds like we travel a lot with our parents. We were traveling with my wife's parents and staying at this resort, fantastic place, with just a ton of walking and a ton of ups and downs and whatever, right? And because both of our parents are senior citizens, and we just wanted something that was more accessible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like it's just not something that they understood as an ask, right? Like it's not that they didn't have it, right? It's just that they didn't understand it as an ask, right? And almost outright rejected it. And that's the other side of it, right? Which is understanding the other side a little bit more. I think that's, I would say, the worst experience. I think we were supposed to stay 5 nights. We stayed 1 night and we checked out of there.
Wow. Yeah, that says everything.
Yeah, like that, it was not the right experience.
Yeah. And the empathy wasn't there. I think that's almost, in a way, when we go through difficult things in our life, it helps us to understand where someone else could be coming from. So what you were saying, I immediately resonated with that from my own family. And even when I deal with guests for my short-term rentals or just in general in life, when someone's being difficult, I'm able to put that lens on it and say, well, if this was my parents, how would they be interacting with a short-term rental host? And understanding like it might not be bad intent. They just might have not a lot of familiarity with booking on Airbnb or other platforms and such, and being able to hold their hand the way that we would for the people in our own lives too.
Yeah, exactly, right. And again, I think the answer isn't that could you do it, right? Because maybe you're bound by not being able to do it. You just don't have things or whatever, right? But it's the empathy and the intent, right? And sometimes intent is very clear, right? I've also had people who go out of their way and say, oh, we know you wanted this and this is not a good experience for you, but here's what we can do to make up or whatever, right? And then when someone tries to say that, you already almost are like, no, it's fine, right?
It's fine.
I don't think you need to make up for anything, right? But the reverse is not as great, right?
Yeah. And final question for you. What does hospitality mean to you? And is there anyone, a person, a brand that you think has truly mastered it?
Yeah, I think just on the lines of what we were saying, right? I think hospitality truly just means making people feel valued and cared for, right? And then of course within our segment, then it becomes how well are you serving them and how well are you representing the home and etc. Right? But I think like true hospitality just leaves you with a warm feeling and not that you had a transaction, right? Oh, I wanted to stay here and I've stayed here. Okay. But it leaves you with that feeling, with that some memory, etc. Right? And so that's I think what hospitality means. It doesn't have to be luxury, right? So let me correct that, right? Because I think sometimes people equate service and going out of the way with luxury. It doesn't have to be luxury, right? It just has to. I think whatever expectations you set, try to supersede those expectations rather than saying, I will set a very high expectation bar that it's also almost hard for myself to meet, right? And so set a bar and then try to exceed that bar is what I would say.
And anyone specific or any brands that you look to and you say, wow, that person gets it. They get hospitality.
I am in short-term rentals industry, but I am a big fan of certain hotel brands just because the way they operate, right? I think Marriott has been my long-time favorite brand. And one, they have all kinds of ranges. Like if I'm down for business, I know I'm always going to be at one of the Marriott brands because I know exactly what I would experience 100% of the time, right? Sure, there are ups and downs, but mostly this is what I would experience, right? And then second, when I think about luxury, I think India has a brand called Oberoi's, which is just absolutely like they go out of your way to help. And then third, I know it's probably like oversaid, but I think Ritz Carlton still does a fantastic job of just making people feel valued. Yeah, I have a story to share, but maybe later on Ritz Carlton.
No, please. I'd love to hear it.
I don't know if you've heard of this customer experience story from Ritz Carlton. I want to say it's Ritz Carlton. Now I'm doubting myself, but back in the day, they set up this $2,000 allowance for their customer associates. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I actually used to work for Marriott and looked after Ritz-Carlton as one of my brands.
And
Yeah.
no, so did you use that $2,000 ever?
It's true. It's real. And, it's interesting. This is just a little side story, but I always used to send postcards to my nephews wherever I would travel to.
Yeah.
And depending on what hotel I was staying at, it was always a little litmus test for me to go up to the front desk and say, hey, can you mail this postcard to me for me? And I would get a variety of responses from like the post office is down the street, or you need to go get a stamp, or we'll charge you for the stamp, or sure, no problem. And in Ritz-Carlton, it was always, no problem at all, ma'am. Nothing ever hit my bill for a fee. And I always imagined that a few cents of that large pot of money for each guest was attributed to my stamp to mail my postcard.
Yeah. And for anyone who's listening in and doesn't know this, right? I think maybe do you want to tell the $2,000 story on Ritz-Carlton?
Go ahead. No, you please.
Oh, at least from what I've heard, the customer service folks there have just a free range of $2,000 to spend on any customer to help improve their experience, right? And I think that's just such a fantastic way to saying that we actually really care about the customer experience, right? And we also trust our team to be able to make the right decisions, right?
Yes,
so I think just that hand in hand thing, I think just like fantastic approach from that brand.
I couldn't agree more. Richie, I have learned so much from you today. Thank you for creating an absolutely vital tool in my life. And thank you even more for being here today.
Thank you so much, Katie. This was fantastic. And looking forward to doing this again, probably sometime.
Likewise. All right, everyone. It's time for today's sweet summary, where I break down the key insights and actionable takeaways from today's conversation. Chatting with Richie today highlighted the intersection of technology, hospitality, and entrepreneurship, and the interdependence thereof. Seeing how thoughtfully he approaches each one, it's impossible not to be inspired. It's no surprise that PriceLabs has become the success story that it is, because he was building the product that he wanted, the product that he needed. He was his own first use case. And honestly, who understands the needs of the consumer better than the consumer himself? Like Richie said, decide the problem you want to solve and then solve it. Sounds simple enough, but we all know it can be anything but. It requires all of us to be willing to fail and fail again and fail again in order to grow. In fact, I found it incredibly refreshing the way that Richie spoke about setbacks. He said that for a big part of his life, he probably hadn't failed enough, and that this can often be an indicator that we're not stretching ourselves to our fullest potential. That first big failure usually hurts the most. But once we've been there, once we've picked ourselves up after the fall, it's the resilience, the adaptability, and the willingness to keep going that ultimately determines who will succeed. Richie brought dynamic pricing to an industry that had only used flat prices for decades. Not to mention, he's been working with AI for over a decade now, too. 11 years ago, when he co-founded the company, AI was seen as more scary than empowering, more sci-fi than supportive. So much so that they had to strike any mention of it from their marketing copy. What conviction it must have taken to build something for a future you can see before anyone else does. Now, not a day goes by that I don't talk to my BFF, ChatGPT. proof of just how quickly our industry and our world can evolve. But even at a time when AI feels more mainstream than ever, Richie left us with a beautiful reminder of what the industry really is at its core: having empathy for one another, having the best of intentions, even if you fall short in delivery. And while AI can support the work we do behind the scenes, it can empower us to make smarter, faster decisions, and it can help us to operate more intelligently, it can never replace that warm feeling, that human connection that ultimately defines true hospitality. And that concludes another episode of Sweet Success. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. We all know how important those 5-star reviews are. I also want to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in. It means the absolute world to me. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future guests, new topics to cover, or even just want to say hi, don't be shy. Message me through our website, sweetsuccesspodcast.com, or on social media at Sweet Success Podcast. That's sweet like hotel suite. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Cline, and I'm super excited to see you all next week.